Frugality and conscious spending are two different ways of managing your money. You're probably familiar with frugal living, with frugality, because it's an age old, tried and true way of maximizing your money. But what if you want to maximize your money without sacrificing your quality of life? Hello, conscious spending. Conscious spending is seen as a great alternative to frugal living. How do these two methods differ? How are they similar? How do they approach the same financial situation? Let's explore that so you can determine what is the best approach for you. With frugality, the primary focus is minimizing spending and saving as much as possible. You're maximizing every dollar. With conscious spending, the primary goal is to deliberately allocate money to areas that matters most to you while cutting back on areas that don't matter that much. It's aligning your spending with your values and priorities. Frugality is driven by a desire to save money, while conscious spending is driven by a desire to live a meaningful, fulfilling life. I know it's a bit black and white. You can be frugal and still want to live a fulfilling life. Let me break it down a lot better. The desire or the driving force behind frugality is to save, save, save. While the driving force with conscious spending isn't just about saving, it's about making sure that while saving, my quality of life isn't taking a hit. So a frugal lifestyle would prioritize saving over everything else, while conscious spending would prioritize quality of life over everything else. Can we maybe we should argue it out in the comment section? How do they go about doing this? With frugality, it's accomplished by cutting costs wherever, whenever. And in most cases, it means sacrificing convenience. I wouldn't necessarily say quality. Extreme case would be quality, but in most cases, it's really sacrificing convenience and comfort. Conscious spending accomplishes its primary goal by optimizing spending, redirecting funds to areas that matter while starving areas that don't matter or going less on areas that don't matter. A good example is the good old coffee example. With personal finance, it always comes down to the coffee. Why are you wasting money on Starbucks? If you don't drink coffee, insert whatever, anything else. All right. So we all know the advice: save money by not buying Starbucks coffee every day, because Starbucks coffee can easily run you $10 a day, right? So with frugality, you're not buying coffee. You're making coffee at home. You buy affordable coffee from the store, coffee grounds from the store, and you make your coffee at home. Conscious spending, on the other hand, goes, I need my Starbucks coffee every morning. It ain't the same as the coffee at home. We all know it's not the same. It is not the same. I need to have my cup of coffee every single morning. This is what helps me go out there and make that money. Right. So I would rather spend the $10 there, but not spend all the other money buying brand name makeup or brand name clothes. Right. So with conscious spending, it's saving money by cutting back in areas that I couldn't care about, while with frugality, you're saving all the time. You're saving on everything. I'm not buying the brand name makeup, but I'm also not buying the coffee, and I get to save $30. Conscious spending, I guess I'm saving 20 compared to 30. Frugality can achieve this by cutting coupons, buying generic, repairing rather than replacing, just avoiding unnecessary purchases. Conscious spending would focus on what matters to them or the things that matter, and then forego, not even bother with cutting coupons and whatnot on areas that don't matter. They just forego it. Now, we can also make the argument that conscious spending doesn't mean they're just going out there and spending money. They too could also use buy generic instead of brand name. They too could also cut coupons, but we're trying to explain the differences between the two, right? The great benefit of frugality is you save a lot. The great benefit to conscious spending is it allows for a more enjoyable, comfortable lifestyle, which is easier to maintain, a way of managing money that's easier to maintain long term. The great concern with frugality is you can easily go from frugal to cheap. It's a very quick move over. The great concern with conscious spending is before you know it, one area of importance or priority becomes two, then becomes three. So now we're not just buying that Starbucks cup of coffee because it matters to you. Now you need the expensive makeup because it also matters to you to look good. And then now you also need X subscription because it matters to you that your mental space is in the right space, and before you know it, all areas is area of high importance, and so you're not saving at all because you're not just conscious spending, you're spending. Period. So what's the best approach for you? Let me explain where these two methods will come in handy, where I think they're best, and then explain what I do to help you out make a decision. Frugality is a good method if you have a short-term goal. If you have either to save an X amount of money or to pay off debt, that's if your debt isn't so high where it's going to take 7 years, right? If you do the math and you could knock it out in a year, two, three, frugality is the way to go. That's what I did. And I don't think conscious spending would have been as effective. When you have a goal, a short term goal, frugality is a great way to hit that goal, to guarantee you will hit that goal, to keep you focused on the goal, and to keep you from getting tempted or to slack and lose intensity. Because with conscious spending, remember, the concern with conscious spending is you can easily move from conscious spending to just spending, and you can justify spending. We're good at justifying spending. So if you have a short term goal, back when I was paying off my credit cards, the frugality was what helped me. And it made me hit that goal super fast. It kept me focused. I knew, we don't have to spend when we don't have to, right? We're not justifying coffee. I've talked about having to justify my $1 McDonald's coffee. That's just $1. But to achieve your short term goal, to be in frugality, you have to be in the frugal mindset. And that frugal mindset, once you lock in, you're going for $1. I can get this for 50 cents. I can get this for free. Why am I spending $1? So if you have a short term goal, frugality works. Be it to save money, be it to pay up debt, it works. But if I were to be paying off debt now, right, with kids, I did it when it was just me. I think if I were doing it now as a family, as a unit, it's very hard to do it hardcore like I did, right? Mommy needs to buy McDonald's every now and then. If mommy wants to, if you all want to keep having mommy needs to buy McDonald's, right? So conscious spending would have been easier. It would be easier. It would definitely take us longer to pay off the debt if we had done conscious spending. But that's where you have to do the work of budgeting. So I think frugality is great for short-term goals, and if it's you don't have a lot of responsibilities, or it's just you, I think it's harder to do with as a family. But it doesn't mean it can be done. And it's also harder to achieve the goal if it's long term, right? If this can I don't think frugality is a long term lifestyle, and I'll explain. Give me a minute. Don't I know people who are living the frugal? Give me a minute. I think it'll make sense when I tell you what I do. All right, so if you had, say, debt that you're in a lot of debt is going to take you 7 years, if you just doing straight up old school frugality, your life is going to be miserable. And if it's not just you, it's you and somebody, it's going to be tough, right? That's where we have to consider what I now do. I do the best of both worlds because why should I choose when I can do both? And I believe in always taking the best of both worlds. So I do prioritize areas of life that matter to me, and I spend there and not spend in other areas that don't matter. But I infuse frugality in those areas. So, yes, it matters, but I find affordable ways and, if possible, cheaper ways or free ways to get it done. For instance, traveling. Traveling, I've always said, will never make sense. Traveling in the frugal mindset would never make sense unless you have to travel, i.e., family, there's a wedding, there's a funeral. And a lot of people only travel when there's a wedding or there's a funeral, when they have to. Because if you don't have to, it doesn't make sense to the frugal mindset why you were spending all this money just to go sleep in someone else's room in someone else's house. You have room at home. You have house at home, right? So, or going out to eat would never make sense. It doesn't make sense. You're going to go pay for something you have at home. Makes no sense. But I do know that I want to enjoy the spoils of life. Like, I'm not just here to work. And I do want to go out and experience some things. So I would spend money going out to eat, but I find cheaper ways to do that. I find affordable ways to do that. I also do not go out to eat all the time. An example I give with frugal living: you go out to eat, don't order wine. And there was a time when I go out to eat, I don't order wine. Now, sometimes I do. I look at it. It depends. It depends, because when I see that part. But there's some occasion, if I'm going out for anniversary, I'm getting wine, right? It's part of the ambiance, right? Not justified with frugal living. Even with the conscious spending, it's not all the time. No, special occasions, I'll get the wine. I don't have to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. See what I mean? So, conscious spending for me is my way of life. I'm very mindful. I'm very demure. I'm very mindful. I'm very conscious about where I spend. It matters to me that my family vacates. We go on vacation annually or whatever. And so I'm spending. It doesn't make sense to the frugal mind, to the frugal lover. It makes no sense, right? The amount of money being spent makes no sense. But the conscious spending lover knows no. This is how we enjoy our lives. This is how we enjoy our living. This is how we live a fulfilling life. This is how we bond as a family. Can you bond somewhere else? Yes, we can. But this is how we enjoy. So the key word there is enjoy. Really, it's not about, it's enjoy. And so I do it, and I just find cheaper ways to get it done. So that's how you use conscious spending. You just have to be careful not to then forego the conscious part of it and stick with the spending. With frugality, you have to be careful not to get into the cheap, becoming cheap. And I think we've started doing better with differentiating between frugal and cheap. I just know it's hard because when you lock into that frugal mindset, it's hard to go from frugal to not being cheap. It's very hard. It's a slippery slope. Same with conscious spending. So you gotta learn to stay in the middle, right here in the middle. Take the best of both worlds. What do you think? What are you doing? Has there been a time where you use just one, or and I think sometimes what happens when we do a lot of frugality, if you listen to a lot of the success stories on paying off debt, a lot of people just come out of frugal mindset just swinging hard. At first, they have a hard time swinging over to be mindful spending. You may know the word as mindful spending, but then they just go all the way to the other extreme because they've been so tight for a long time trying to hit their goals. And then after a while, they correct. And some people, after a while, they go back to frugality because they just don't know how to keep that balance of being in the happy middle, right? So let me know, what do you think? What are you doing now? Are you currently doing the frugal lifestyle because, listen, you're trying to save up, or are you trying to balance both? I think the way to go, the best way to go is to balance both. But if you have a debt, I think debt is the one time where focus and get it done, focus and clean it up. But depending on the amount of debt, I always say that because the amount matters. If it's going to take 7 years, I would not be in that frugal space for 7 years. I would not. I do, especially if you have kids. That is a key thing, especially if you have kids. It's one thing to pay off the debt after 7 years. It's one thing to lose memories and certain things after 7 years, right? I think there's some things that it's just you want to have that experience while they're younger, and when they're older, they're older. It's not like you can find other things. Sure, you know what? Let me know what you're doing. Let me stop blabbing. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.